What is up, guys? It is Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about some of the top trade targets heading into week 3 of the NFL season. Like I talked about last week, I truly believe that the best time to buy, the best time to truly dominate trades is early on in the fantasy season. Everyone loves to overreact. If a player has a rough start, they'll immediately downgrade that player in their mind, when in reality, it's a 17-game season. Some rough stretches are going to happen. Certain games, there's weird things where maybe a guy doesn't get into the end zone. He loses points here or there. It's just too early to make these massive moves where you're giving up a guy who you really believed in, 14 days ago. And I think the best kind of trade targets to look for are guys that have really solid usage and volume. Maybe they just haven't gotten into the end zone. Maybe the efficiency hasn't been there yet. But what's, probably most predictable moving forward is the volume. It's not that this player scored 3 touchdowns through 3 weeks. So we're going to be looking for volume players who I think can hit on those touchdowns and efficiency later on throughout the season. Before I jump into the players, if you guys do have any fantasy questions, it doesn't have to be trade related. It could be waiver wire. I guess start sit, but it'd be pretty early on if we're talking about week 3. Just drop those down below and I'll be responding to every single person. And then if you guys do enjoy the video, please do me a huge favor, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really does help me out a ton. But jumping into the first buy low player, this may be the only opportunity the entire season that you can buy this guy low, and that is going to be Christian McCaffrey. So through 2 weeks of the NFL season, he's been okay. Definitely underwhelming if you're drafting him, top 5 for fantasy. Week 1, he had 15.7 PPR points on 10 carries, 33 yards, a touchdown, then 5 targets, 4 receptions, 24 yards. Then week 2, 16.8 points, 15 carries, 102 yards, 5 targets, 4 receptions, 26 yards. Actually had a much better game in week 2, but just didn't get into the end zone. So, the production week 1 and week 2 looking very, very similar. For me, I'm not panicking on Christian McCaffrey. Obviously, it's not ideal that he hasn't dominated. I was expecting elite production from day one, but he has still dominated the opportunities in this offense. It's not like his workload is being eaten into. Diontae Fournette is the number 2 in that backfield. He had 2 carries week 1, 2 carries week 2. That's compared to 25 carries over 2 weeks for Christian McCaffrey. So we don't have a threat where this is turning into a committee. Christian McCaffrey is still very much the clear-cut number 1. I truly believe that better games are ahead. I'm still viewing Christian McCaffrey as one of the most valuable players in fantasy. Honestly, at this point, if we were redrafting, or I guess just drafting right now, I feel like that number 1 spot could go to anyone. You could be looking CMC, Jonathan Taylor, throwing in the wide receivers, Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp. That number 1 spot is up for grabs. So I don't want to firmly say, he'd be my number 1 pick, but he is still a mid to early first round pick in my opinion. We have to remember, 2 games of okay production. I'd rather take the sample size of the past, basically his entire NFL career, where when he's been the workhorse, he's going to give you 20 plus points per game. He's going to have better touchdown games. He's also going to have games where he's getting 10 targets. The 5 targets in back-to-back games, I just can't see that lasting, especially when you're looking at the Panthers offense. Overall, it hasn't looked great. You got to get the ball in your best player's hands. So I think Christian McCaffrey is going to boom later on in the season. I mean, he could go out week 3, put up 30 points, and you're never going to see his value this low ever again. So I try to, just throw out offers for CMC. Obviously, I can't give specific players, but maybe you have a fringe RB1, throw that RB1 in there with a wide receiver 3. See if the owner's panicking. Just kind of ask around there for Christian McCaffrey. Now, the next buy low player is going to be another running back, another workhorse, and it is going to be Leonard Fournette. Fournette through 2 weeks has had a massive workload, and I mean a massive workload, and it just has not yet translated to top production. So through 2 games, he is averaging 22.5 carries per game and 3 targets per game. In those 2 weeks, he has only scored 15.7 and 9.4 points. Straight up, that has just come down to not scoring touchdowns. The Bucs offense hasn't looked pretty through 2 weeks, but this is not something that I'm panicking. The Bucs offense is going to get better. The wide receivers are going to get healthier. They're going to be able to move the ball. You also have Donovan Smith, who's somewhat close to returning. I don't think this is a situation where the Bucs offense is self-destructing and they're going to be a low touchdown offense, low efficiency. They will bounce back. I'm confident in that. So if you have Leonard Fournette getting that workload on this Bucs offense, 20 plus carries a game, 3 targets. I bet that number could go up also. He's going to have some massive games in the future. So like I talked about at the beginning, like Leonard Fournette is the pinpoint example of who you want to be targeting. A guy with a fantastic workload, but hasn't gotten those touchdowns. I expect the workload to stick more than I expect, him not getting into the end zone. So I love Leonard Fournette as a trade target. And whether or not you want to trade for Leonard Fournette, please, 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 if Rachaad White is on your waiver wire, please pick him up. If you're a Lenny owner, pick him up. If you don't own Lenny, still pick him up. Rachaad White has, top 15 running back potential if Fournette goes down. One of the most valuable handcuffs in fantasy football. So not related to Fournette, but go get Rachaad White if he's out there. I'll talk about him in the waiver wire video. And then also, I'm not going to put up a graphic for him, but I also think you can buy low on Tom Brady. I'm expecting bounce back games. We had Chris Godwin leaving in week 1. Evans was banged up week 1. Julio's out here week 2. Just a lot going on with this offense. Brady will get better. I'm not a huge guy who's going out and trading for quarterbacks, so that's not really why I put him. That's why I didn't really put him on the list here. But, if someone's, trying to have a bargain sale on Brady, I'm fine buying him. The next buy low option is going to be Diontae Johnson. I've been a huge Diontae Johnson fan, basically going back to last offseason. Very, very high on Diontae Johnson. And he's in that same role as Leonard Fournette, where he has had top production and top volume in a horrible offense. Now, when I say top production, I'm not talking about elite fantasy numbers. Week 1, 12.5 points. Week 2, 13.7 points. But we have to look at the volume and just what's going on in this overall offense. So week 1, 12 targets. Week 2, 10 targets. Double-digit targets, back-to-back games. This is what we've come to expect out of Diontae Johnson. And when I say top production, I'm not talking 100 yards per game, whatever, but in comparison to the offense he is in. In 2 games, Mitch Trubisky has thrown for 362 yards and 2 touchdowns. Very, very poor start for this Steelers passing attack. It's tough for this unit to get worse. That's kind of where I'm going here with Diontae Johnson. I feel like right now, Diontae is at his floor. We know he's always going to be a volume option. We know he's going to be commanding a very high target share. The question just comes with the touchdowns are going to get better for this offense, and the yardage has to get better. It's also possible that a quarterback shakeup could come in here. Mitch hasn't exactly been convincing, for being the starter long term. I think if Pickett comes in, it could give this offense a boost. But even if he doesn't, Diontae Johnson can consistently, put up these numbers. And if he gets 6, 7 touchdowns on the season, he's going to be someone you can buy. He also is like this, mid-tier wide receiver too, who hasn't had any boom games yet. I bet if you go to the Diontae Johnson owner in your league and they're just not a massive Diontae Johnson fan, you can probably trade him as if he's being valued as a fringe top 24 wide receiver. I think he's locked in at that spot. So Diontae Johnson is definitely someone I'd be looking to acquire for fantasy. And then the fourth and final buy low option is going to be Chris Olave. Now, when you look at his week 2 stat line, you may not really think he's a buy low. 5 receptions, 80 yards for a rookie. Pretty nice game. 11 PPR points. He did have a weird lost fumble situation. So the production really wasn't great. You probably don't love 11 points in your starting lineup. But in an alternate reality, I'm not being sarcastic when I say this, Chris Olave could have had a 200-yard, 2-touchdown day. He had 365 air yards. He was targeted 13 times against the Bucs. Jameis Winston missed him blatantly deep twice. Had separation, would have been, massive gains, probably massive gains plus touchdowns. And then Olave also kind of stumbled, was reaching out, lost his balance on another deep play, which resulted in the fumble where he never got touched, but he slammed himself into the ground. I'm sure most of you guys saw that. But basically what I'm getting at here is that Olave appears to be destined for a very strong finish, commanding 13 targets, and this wasn't a situation where he was only commanding targets in garbage time. Jameis was missing him deep early on in the game, so Olave was a high volume option. This is competing for targets with Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry. If he's doing that and getting open, he's a guy I want to be invested in. We've seen some of these young wide receivers already ball out. Drake London, Garrett Wilson. I want to buy in on Chris Olave before he has one of those massive games, and then he's untradeable because the owner wants to hold on to, their new young weapon. So those are my 4 top trade targets right now. We've got Christian McCaffrey, Leonard Fournette, Diontae Johnson, and Chris Olave. If you guys want to ask around in the comment section, this is my roster, what should I be giving up to get X player, that's totally cool. You guys can drop those down below. I'll also be going through my waiver wire. That video will already be out by the time you're watching this. And then I'll also be going through some of my sell high players. So basically just the inverse of this video. If you guys did stay all the way till the end, I really appreciate it. Once again, just hit that like button and subscribe. But thank you all for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one.